Hayward Podworks. 100 shows, one vision.
Our sources explain it all. For more information on upcoming shows or to suggest shows, email brianhayward2026@gmail.com. And now let's get into our show. Hayward Podworks is vision, deep dives into any topic.
Okay, let's get into it. Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're unpacking one of the most, consuming and confusing human emotions we all deal with: anger. We've been going through this really comprehensive guide on gaining control over it, and honestly, the whole premise just changes how you look at things. If you're someone who wants to understand, why you react the way you do, this is for you.
And we have to start right at the foundation. The research is just so clear on this. Anger is not a primary emotion.
That's the key, right? The linchpin of the whole thing.
It really is. It's explicitly a secondary emotion. And that means it's always a reaction. It can't just exist on its own. It has to be triggered by a more fundamental primary feeling first.
It's not the engine. It's more like the airbag going off.
That's a great way to put it.
It's the body's protective response to something deeper that's going wrong.
Exactly. It's the symptom, not the actual disease. And the sources we looked at identify two overwhelmingly common triggers. If you trace your anger back far enough, you'll almost always land on one of two things: either fear or depression.
And that completely reframes the whole mission here. We're not really here to talk about anger management in that old-fashioned sense. We're trying to understand the hidden architecture of rage so we can identify the type of anger, get to those deep roots, and then give you the right tools to turn it into something you can actually manage. So to start gaining control, we have to look outward first, right? Before digging into the deep psychology, the sources really stress identifying your environmental and lifestyle triggers.
And they're so personal. What sets one person off might not even register for someone else. But if we look at just the general stresses of life today, the material points to four really pervasive factors that, build up that base level of agitation.
Let's break those four down because I think they're going to feel very, very relevant to almost everyone listening.
The first one, and you could argue it's the most common, is just stress.
Right, the background noise of modern life.
It's a relentless pressure cooker. It's noisy. It's fast. Your system is always in this low-grade state of alert. And that constant strain just takes a huge toll. It just eats away at the energy you need to regulate your emotions.
Which flows right into the second one, doesn't it? Financial issues.
It's a perfect example. If general stress is the fuel, then money worries are often the match. The material really highlights how that constant dread of bills piling up, or just the pressure of debt, it's a continuous stressor that translates directly into being irritable and angry.
And this is where we get into those vicious cycles you mentioned.
Exactly. The third big cause is social and family issues. When things are wrong in your closest relationships with a partner, family, that leads to pain, frustration. That often comes out as anger.
But the anger makes the relationship worse.
That's the destructive part. The anger reinforces the original problem. It's a truly self-perpetuating negative loop.
That's a rough realization, that your reaction is actually fueling the fire.
It is. And the fourth one, drug and alcohol abuse, is another perfect example of that feedback loop. People often turn to substances to, numb or cope with feelings like anger or stress. But of course, substance abuse leads to impaired judgment, more negative emotions, which just brings you right back to being angry and needing to cope again.
Okay, so those external factors build the kindling. But now we need to understand the spark. Let's shift to those two deeper psychological roots you mentioned, fear and depression.
Right. And let's spend a minute on fear because it's so primal. We are hardwired for survival. Anger is deeply, deeply tied into our fight or flight system.
Okay.
When your brain detects danger, whether it's real or just perceived, fear is that first instant response. But it can pivot. Instead of running, it can turn that fear into this high-octane rage to confront the threat.
So, in a way, anger is like the brain's heaviest weapon for self-defense.
Absolutely. And what's really fascinating is that some psychologists argue that fear and anger are so closely linked, they're almost the same emotion. They rarely exist without the other. Anger is very often used as the brain's sort of psychological shield.
A shield to protect you from something?
To distract you from what you're truly afraid of facing.
That's a really subtle but powerful idea. Can you give us an example of how that works?
Sure. We see it all the time. Think about the fear of failure or the fear of looking incompetent. The source uses a great example of a kid in a classroom who gets asked a tough question.
Oh, okay.
The real internal fear is, I don't know the answer, and everyone's going to think I'm dumb. So it's psychologically much easier to act out, to get disruptive, to get angry at the teacher, and then get sent out of the room.
So the anger successfully shielded them from having to admit they didn't know.
Exactly. It worked.
So how does that play out in adult life, in relationships, for example?
Well, the source gives a really compelling and kind of tragic example. Imagine someone has this deep underlying fear that their partner's going to cheat on them or leave them.
Right.
So they might start becoming angry and accusatory, preemptively. They start mistreating their partner based on this fear that has no basis in reality.
And what happens?
Over time, that fear-driven anger, it pushes the partner away. It causes the very thing they were afraid of.
The defense mechanism becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Precisely. And this is why so many psychologists believe that people who struggle with chronic anger have some kind of unaddressed, deep-seated fear. The crucial first step for anyone listening is just brutal self-honesty. You have to ask yourself, am I really angry right now, or am I scared?
Wow. Let's turn to the other major root cause now, depression leading to rage. How does that long-term sadness morph into something so explosive?
When someone's been dealing with depression for a long time, we're talking weeks, months, even years, there's this perpetual feeling of, getting the short end of the stick. This sense of powerlessness, that feeling of hopelessness and unfairness, over time, it just curdles into this deep irritability and eventually really serious rage issues.
So we're talking about a fundamental personality shift when depression is in charge for that long.
Oh, absolutely. The material points out that it fundamentally changes you. Your ambition, your drive, your interests, they all just vanish. Smiles become rare. When you feel like life is constantly dealing you a bad hand, it's almost a natural response for that helplessness to convert into anger.
And the key insight there is that taking the anger out in negative ways just creates more problems.
It creates a downward emotional spiral. It's heavily reinforced by this idea that you attract what you project.
Right.
If you are constantly broadcasting these angry, irritable vibes, you're basically telling the world you're closed off and ready for a fight.
Right.
And, well, that's the energy you're going to get back.
So the goal isn't just to stop being angry, but to actually shift the entire frequency you're putting out there. That's powerful. Okay, so once we understand the why, the fear or the depression, the next step is identifying how the anger is showing up. Knowing the pipe you're dealing with seems vital for figuring out what to do next.
Right. The material breaks it down into 3 common types. The first, and the one we all recognize, is aggressive anger.
This is the explosive, hard-to-control version we picture when we think of a meltdown.
Exactly. People with this type really struggle with impulse control. They act out with rage. They can become violent, verbally abusive. They say terrible things they don't mean, and then feel this intense guilt later. But you can't undo the actions.
And the consequences can be huge.
Huge. Ruin relationships, losing a job, even legal trouble.
Then you have the opposite, the quieter form, passive anger. This seems almost more destructive because it's hidden.
It's very subtle. It's often subconscious. The person might not even realize they're angry. They express it indirectly. Stubbornness, avoidance, maybe some low-key sabotage. They just bottle up all these little resentments.
Until they explode.
Until they figuratively explode. Yes.
Yeah.
In a way that seems totally out of proportion to the situation.
So they go from 0 to 100 because they haven't been dealing with the 10, 20, and 50 along the way.
Precisely. And then there's the hybrid, passive-aggressive anger. This is more of a slow burn. The anger doesn't show itself right away, but it's festering. They might use sarcasm, the silent treatment, manipulative ways to express their hostility, and all the while that rage is just building and building internally.
Okay, so we've got the roots, the causes, the types. Now for the solutions. The source material gets into two big categories of practical tools, starting with the idea of simplifying your life. We're basically trying to combat that constant stimulation and multitasking, which is just draining our emotional batteries.
It's a necessary antidote. Your brain desperately needs time to rest and process. If you're just constantly cramming data in, the result is going to be irritation and anger.
We've got 6 specific areas here for simplification. Let's go through them, starting with one that might be unexpected. Our possessions.
The advice here is to keep your physical stuff to the bare minimum. And this isn't just, a trend. It's about reducing stress points. Material things require money, maintenance, worry. Less stuff means less financial burden, less worry, and more contentment.
And that's directly related to the next one. Clutter. I'm looking at my desk right now and feeling very seen.
It's so real. A cluttered space causes this constant low-level distraction. It fuels stress. Our brains crave order. So just keeping your workspace and your home neat, it creates a feeling of control and stability. It really does reduce that feeling of being overwhelmed.
The third one hits hard for the modern schedule. Overbooking.
Right. We're warned against cramming too many activities in. Social, professional, whatever. When you're constantly rushing, you cause this massive brain stimulation overload. And that nervousness about being on time, that anxiety, it's a direct line to anger. You have to schedule downtime.
Next up is goal setting. We need to set realistic goals.
This is about setting yourself up for an emotional win. Start small. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
If you set these huge, impossible goals and then you fail, it just creates this sense of emotional failure, which feeds the depression and the rage.
Give yourself some wins. I like that. Okay, the fifth one is simple but deep. Your speech. The advice is to minimize how much you speak, and especially to avoid gossip.
This does two things. First, it gives you more internal silence to process your own thoughts. And second, it stops you from getting overloaded by other people's drama and problems.
And finally, the big one for pretty much everyone listening, multitasking.
The science on this is pretty clear. The human mind is designed to process one task at a time.
So multitasking isn't real.
It's not. It's actually rapid switch tasking. Your brain is quickly shutting down and restarting focus over and over. It overworks the brain, deprives it of rest, and just tanks your cognitive threshold. People who do it constantly always seem irritated because their minds are just exhausted.
That is a huge incentive to just slow down and do one thing at a time. Which leads us right into the next set of tools, starting with a practice that's thousands of years old. Meditation.
Meditation is so powerful because it's a direct way to connect with your inner self. It's the only way to really find and address those primary issues, the fear and the depression, that are actually fueling the anger.
So what are the practical tips for someone who wants to start a meditation practice?
Okay, first, your posture. Find a comfortable spot, but your spine and head have to be aligned and upright, no slumping. Second is focus. You have to concentrate on the here and now. Actively let go of worries about the past or future.
And the easiest way in is always the breath, right?
Always. Focusing on your breathing is what calms your nervous system. Counting your breaths is an ancient technique to heighten that focus. And when negative thoughts come up, and they will, don't fight them. Just acknowledge them and then use your breathing to gently pull your focus back.
And we have to talk about length for beginners.
Oh, absolutely. It's mentally exhausting at first. Start short. 5 minutes is a huge win. Then build from there. And finally, try to find a designated, quiet space where you know you can be alone and just hear your own thoughts.
Okay, our last essential tool is for when anger does show up and we need to handle it productively. Good communication. The source is really clear that bottling up anger is just incredibly harmful. It just leads to that emotional flood where you lose all control.
And effective communication is the key to making your point while keeping your cool, so that the other person can actually hear you instead of just getting defensive.
And the number one rule here, especially when things are heated, is using I statements.
This is absolutely crucial. You have to avoid the word you because it just sounds like a personal attack.
It puts them on the defensive immediately.
Immediately. So instead of saying, you disrespect me, which is assigning blame, you say, I feel disrespected. You're owning your feeling. It feels a bit awkward at first, but it de-escalates things instantly.
We also have to be mindful of our proper body posture.
Right. You want to have an open posture, no crossed arms, maintain eye contact, keep your face and jaw relaxed. Your nonverbal cues are screaming, I'm ready for a fight, or I'm open to a solution.
And finally, the universal rule for everything, the golden rule.
Speak in a calm voice. Don't talk down to people. Don't use offensive language. Speak to them the way you'd want to be spoken to. It just maintains the dignity of the conversation, even if the topic is really difficult.
This has been a really, really practical deep dive. It's so clear that controlling anger isn't easy, but the sources make it clear that it's entirely possible with some determination and practice.
And we have to remember what's at stake. Unmanaged anger isn't just bad for your emotional health, it's physically damaging. Change isn't going to happen overnight, but that first step is just deciding to finally address the fear or depression that's underneath it all.
So we'll leave you with this final thought from the source material, something to think about as you look at your own cycles of frustration.
Even when things seem like they could not get any worse, you have to remember that they can and they will, unless you change your way of looking at life. Your ability to stop the cycle of anger and depression lies only with you.
Hayward Podworks. 100 shows, one vision.
All right, this is Hayward Podworks, and that's today's episode. If this helped you, do me a favor, hit follow, leave a quick rating, and share it with one person who'd get value. Want the extras, links, and new drops? Check the show notes. Until next time, stay sharp, stay consistent, and keep building. Hayward Podworks. We'll talk soon.